In recent years, broadband and digital media technologies have renewed opportunities to produce, distribute, and exchange information and culture. However, according to the FCC's groundbreaking report on the information needs of communities in 2010, localities around the country now face new challenges, more prominently a shortage of locally relevant information and news, less accountability, and diminished local capacities to generate content that meets these needs. In 2008, after more than 3 decades of operation, Amherst Media revamped its services to expand digital media training, citizen productions, and online distribution of digital media content to serve public, educational, and government information needs of our community. In the last 4 years, and with continuous support of the town of Amherst and local residents, we have reorganized our operations to become a digital community access center. This process has entailed digitizing and retooling the equipment, developing new training services, upgrading online distribution of our programs, reorganizing staff positions to fulfill new functions, rebranding our organization, and becoming an Apple-authorized training center. Seeking broader citizen input and participation in this process of change, Amherst Media commissioned an evaluation of its services. We wanted to better understand who was using or not using our services, how our programs and services meet information needs of local residents, and what they would like to see improved. We are pleased to present the results of this process of public consultation that engaged more than 200 users of our services through surveys, focus group discussions, and individual interviews. Amherst Media would like to thank Dr. Martha Fuentes Bautista, Faculty of Communication and Public Policy at UMass Amherst, and her team for designing the research and leading the consultation process.
Thank you, Jim. I thought that actually the questions that Amherst Media and you posed for this study were very interesting and particularly relevant for current discussions about the future of media and the public media, and in particular for organizations like Amherst Media that are facing the challenges of this digital environment. One of the paradoxes of our times right now is that yes, we do have multiple ways of connecting, creating, exchanging information and culture, but we are looking at more and more newspapers and local media outlets closing doors. We are now seeing the emergence of what we call nowadays the information deserts. There are places that are not served by any local media outlet, or maybe just one. And we see actually this as a national trend emerging. In 2009, actually, a high-level commission, the NICE Commission of Information Needs of Communities in a Democracy, looked into these issues. And one of the recommendations of the commission was that community leaders and residents all across the country should look into these problems and take action to improve the flow of information and news, local news in their communities. According to the NICE Foundation, in order to improve the health of our local information ecosystem, we need to pay attention to 3 components of the ecosystem. The first one is access to communication information infrastructure. Basically, if you want, the pathways by which we enter and get to know what's going on in the local media market. Then we have to pay attention to the supply of community relevant information, and also think about how to improve the skills that individuals and organizations, groups may have to analyze, produce, and exchange information at the local level. So the goal of this study was to assess Amherst Media's contribution to these 3 components of our local information ecosystem.
Well, we also asked you to account for, Martha, the different modes of community involvement in Amherst Media. Could you explain what these different modes were?
Well, on the one hand, this study tried to be a little bit more all-encompassing the traditional studies. On the one hand, we have the traditional ascertainment studies of community broadcasting that only look at viewership of programming produced and distributed here. On the other hand, we have studies of community media that looks at how local content get produced, so the ability of these organizations to support local content production. But we know that watching programs or producing videos are not the only ways people participate in Amherst Media. So our goal was to account for different forms of community participation, from viewership, arguably is a very passive form of engaging in our media system, to training, engaging in community events and do volunteer work in these community events, also through sponsorships of local programs and productions, etc. So for that reason, we call these projects Access 360, because it's an attempt to give, if you want, a 360 view of all what's going on here.
Martha, can you briefly explain the methodology of this study?
Well, to give this 360 view, we thought of engaging the core group of users of these facilities and services. So we wanted to understand how people get involved in different activities and why. We focus on the Amherst Media user community in various ways. How first we use a survey to understand kind of the social demographics and patterns of media use of Amherst Media users. And then we invited participants in this survey to share their thoughts and insights through focus groups, discussions, and interviews. So these conversations actually help us to understand the motivations for people to come and watch programs and use the facility, etc. We wanted to understand the opportunities and challenges that the public find in engaging with Amherst Media. We have actually 55 people volunteering to engage with our group in focus groups discussions. And my team also follow up with interviews with 10 sponsors and video producers here at the center.
What did you find was one of the most surprising findings of the study for you personally?
For me, actually, I think it was understanding that Amherst Media function as a regional media center. 40% of the people who participate in our study come from up to 17 towns in the region. Some of them actually commute long distances and use sometimes the web to follow up what's going on here. In our focus groups, some of these users explain that they see many advantages in Amherst Media services in terms of, for instance, the openness and flexibility of the facility, flexible rules and time and a schedule of things. The schedule was an important point for the users, in particular those that commute long distance. They think that the facility provides flexible schedules and hours. For producers that are interested in digital media training, the quality of equipment they find here is another very important point. One of the things that people really appreciate about Amherst Media is the quality of the staff. They think that the staff support the multiple activities that they do here at the center. They think that they're helpful and knowledgeable. In general, if you want, they find a nice and welcoming atmosphere to work here.
Did the survey find any distinct characteristics regarding the Amherst Media users?
Yes. Amherst Media users, they have, if you want, two main characteristics in their media habits. One is that they use both television sets and computer, laptops, and so forth at the same rate or at the same penetration to watch video programs. The majority of participants in our study actually have broadband at home, about 84%, which is most or less the average in the country, but 16 do not. 16% of the people who participated did not have any kind of access at home. So for them, Amherst Media is an important place to, not only access the web, but use services here. Why they don't have access? Actually, we found that price of a service for them was one of the main reasons preventing them from, subscribing broadband. In general, Amherst Media users also are heavy consumers of local news and information, and they really appreciate the alternative viewpoints.
Well, it really is pleasing to hear about how the staff is recognized for the knowledge and for the equipment that we have. But what did you find in terms of different ways in which the public participates in Amherst Media?
Well, the most important thing to say is that the public is engaged with Amherst Media in many ways and has very strong ties to the Access Center. Most of the people, of course, participate by watching programs. About 70% of the people in the study actually are frequent users. But what is interesting is that half of them tend to have contact with Amherst Media in other ways, correct? For instance, in other ways that actually are different from just producing video. The second most popular form of public engagement and participation in Amherst Media is through the actual use of the facility. Almost 50% of the people actually use the services here at this center. About a third of them also produce content, and many actually volunteer at the station. I think 10% of our participants have at some point sponsored programs.
Well, given that we are being asked to vacate our facilities of over 12 years and find a suitable replacement, it is very important for us to understand why the use of this facility is so critical for the public, right?
Sure, and actually, 47% of the people, as I said, use the facility, and they were extremely concerned about the future of Amherst Media, the Amherst Media Center. So participants actually asked to hold, if you want a public discussion about this issue, public discussion that involve board members and town representatives and other citizens, because they feel that this is kind of the Times Square for them. Another important aspect for the users is that Amherst Media is really a tool to connect to members of the local community. And not just, as I said, Amherst community, but the surrounding communities as well. They like their services in terms of they feel that they are informed about local issues. Actually, this feeling of being informed about public affairs is the main factor driving, if you want, participation in Amherst Media. Besides that, the center fulfills, if you think, a really important role as a vocational center for many in this community.
How so? How do you mean that? A vocational center?
Yeah, the majority of the users, I'm thinking it's about 53%, have taken media training classes here. And they really feel that, it had been at one point an important place for their vocational development.
So what is Amherst Media's contribution to, let's change the subject a little bit, to the local information ecosystem vis-a-vis other local media outlets?
According to the survey, in order to be informed about local issues, actually users of Amherst Media services need to supplement, if you want, the use or the consumption of information from Amherst Media with, of course, the information they find in other media outlets like newspapers, public media stations around the region, and so forth.
How do these people interact with other components of the community media and private sector entities then?
They read local newspapers because they feel that the local newspapers are kind of a community agenda setters. They are the ones that provide the headlines for them to really understand how to map out, if you want, the local public affairs. Then they really use, for instance, PBS and NPR stations as, if you want, a connection of issues across the region. And the connection actually of these regional issues with international debates as well. So Amherst Media for them offers another type of service, which is a more kind of hyper-local. So if you think about the public media stations like NPR doing the regional, Amherst Media will be the really hyper-local that will bring kind of these conversations down to the community. So Amherst Media content allow, if you want, citizens to follow up kind of the local stories and how they connect and make sense of how they connect to regional and state issues and so forth.
So, you know, we really, it's interesting that some of the findings, we were already moving in certain directions to accommodate the communities has expressed that need, such as news gathering, we're trying to do that. But what do you think is the role of Amherst Media as a branch of the information policy of local government? Because most of those shows we do are government coverage, which people are really dependent upon.
People tend to forget that before the web, you know, access centers like this were the first kind of e-government service. Mm-hmm. And what we found actually is that for instance, the broadcasting of town hall meetings and debates and at schools and so forth are very important for residents, and not only Amherst residents, I said, people around the region. Amherst Media brings this feeling of open government. It's a window to the deliberative process that happened really in the town. And the realization that these local government functions to inform the public is critical. It's critical. It's very, very important. In that sense, they feel that Amherst Media is a tool for citizen monitoring of the local government and the public affairs issues. They also feel that here they find alternative views and with some more in-depth coverage of the local public affairs. They think that the local blogs sometimes are a little bit partisan and biased about issues, and here they find different viewpoints, correct, that can contrast.
Well, it's interesting. The blogs it's almost not sure it's moving on the way people thought it was going to continue. But we have devoted here tremendous efforts to the creation and development of our open source website, overall web presence. What did you find out about that? Was that brought up in the discussion?
You know, we found that like 75% of participants have used the website in one way or another. So users want Amherst Media to expand, if you want, the role of a website as a local archive and curator of community content. Participants in focus groups see Amherst Media, if you want, as a town center, as I said, as a modern digital library, as a fire station for public speech, some said. So users see Amherst Media using the website to become this kind of local YouTube that distribute all sorts of community medias, not just those produced here at the center.
What were some of the problems? I mean, I find that interesting. We have been doing that for a while, but not to that extent. What other recommendations did you get from the community? Because that's what's going to drive us as we plan for the future.
Yeah, and I appreciate the openness of Amherst Media when we started to talk about some of the problems we found or places where, you know, things can be improved. And the first one will be awareness. Basically, the participants in our study said, hey, we think that, you know, outreach can be done to involve more underrepresented groups in the community. So they would like to see involved in the many aspects of Amherst Media, kind of a larger cross-section of the Amherst community and the region. We also find that many users ignore, if you want, the idea, the nature of Amherst Media being as a community-based nonprofit media project that is supported by the local government and that receive these private sponsorships and is supported by the volunteer work of the community. So I think that they found that, you know, much more can be done in terms of informing the public about the many aspects of your operations here.
So though you touched upon this, could we just go over one more time a little bit on the recommendations? As I say, we're moving forward, and what could help us in formulating our strategic plan for Amherst Media? Yeah,
recommended more live broadcastings of community events. They also talked about, I know that you have here, for instance, discounts for group training sessions. You have scholarship for students of the 5 colleges. You have also discount for low-income residents, but they want people to know about these possibilities and to find out more about that will be, again, reinforcing the idea of the outreach. Finally, I found both in the kind of younger users and in different parts of the Amherst using community, a big interest in engaging the community of the 5 colleges, in particular students. Amherst Media users also would love to see more creative media.
Like screenwriting and things like that?
Yes.
Filmmaking?
Exactly. Screenwriting, filmmaking, coupled with these classes that you now offer, that has to do more with technical skills. Mm-hmm. Users also recommend increasing the student-driven content of the educational channel to attract larger audiences. They love programs like Student News. Mm-hmm. Producers also suggest to increase the sustainability, if you want, of local productions in many ways. For instance, by matching citizen producers with organizations and local groups that want to see certain content produced. We found that it's the case of many sponsors that they would like to see, for instance, more content produced for certain nonprofit organizations. Maybe you can do the matchmaking there with local producers. A way to do that also, and to kind of make the production the producer community grow, would be organizing regular meetups with community producers and between producers and other members of the public. This can be done here at the center and other places of the town, and can increase the base for work to support community productions.
Are there other ways that they recommended for us to help them?
Sure, like offering competitive grants and scholarship for citizen producers who distribute, here at the center. Also, if you are involving Amherst Media interns in citizen productions, and I'm talking about citizen journalism, for instance, is something that I know is emerging here, but the public would like to see more. Users also recommend improving live broadcasting of local government and community events, doing this kind of citizen journalism and public affairs programs that somehow present a summary of the issues that are going on at the local government. The sustainability of these programs can be enhanced through partnerships with local papers and colleges. This is something actually the users recommend. They would like to see, if you want Amherst Media content, in the websites of local newspapers and the other way around. Users insisted that the most important aspect to be preserved, in this kind of process of transformation of Amherst Media would be the coverage of local issues with certain depth and presenting different viewpoints on local debates. So Amherst Media can strengthen and enhance its local government information functions by publicizing better, if you want, the programming of the government channel. And this also can be done through the town website. This is something that is not done. The town website just has a link to Amherst Media, but it's kind of, if you want, promoting the programming of Amherst Media in the local website of our town government.
So can you expand on the partnership concept a little bit more, just that you touched upon? I find that very interesting. It's something we're constantly trying to do, but did they have specifics in mind?
Well, they see the partnerships with local newspapers as a really important point that can benefit both Amherst Media and local papers, correct? Because they feel, as I told you at the beginning, there is this point in which the public has to scan through many screens, windows, to come up with a picture of what's going on here in the community. So they think that drawing on the strengths of Amherst Media, being as a trusted source of community information, they can maybe bring this idea of the hyperlocal function of Amherst Media with this agenda-setting function of local newspapers. They think that It's a way to network, if you want, Amherst residents also with neighboring communities. Other efforts to cultivate local audiences they suggested may include distributing and posting programming and event informations at particular community locations, like the town library, correct? That is so important for us, or the senior center, or the cafes downtown Amherst. So there will be, if you want, offline, online ways to find information about what is going on here in Amherst Media. The public also felt that more attention is needed in the curation and archiving of online materials, correct, of Amherst Media. Users suggested, for instance, revising the tagging system nowadays you used to archive web content. Also, you may want to require your producers to provide more information, more accurate descriptions of the kind of content they're making available online.
Well, Martha, that's so much information that you were able to gather in this process. And on behalf of the Amherst Media, the staff, the members, the board of directors, and the greater community, I want to thank you for providing us with such valuable information, which will definitely enable us to move forward in seeking our new media center and configuring a facility that is embedded with programs and opportunities that reflect and meet the expressed needs that you were able to get from the population directly and firsthand. Your research in the area of community media continues to highlight the unique and integral role media centers perpetuate in their ever-changing environment of communications via digital technology. I hope other centers will see your methodology as a helpful tool in identifying their changing user base as it expands beyond passive viewers and occasional producers of content alone. Collectively, this is the kind of information that is needed to make the case in each state and at the national level that media centers such as PEG centers are too valuable not only to be immediate communities, but to their regions and to the nation as a whole. Not to include them in any and all conversations dealing with economic development is short-sighted and regressive. The full report and executive summary will be posted on Amherst Media's website. Please take the time to read them and use if you have a media access center. Thank you for participating, and I appreciate your time.